All right, we should be live. I think it's good. Please, if you are here, let us know in the chat that you're here. We'd love to see your comments. You can just do that by leaving comments on the YouTube page. Welcome. Glenn and I are finally back after a little hiatus over the summer. We're going to try to pick these up and do these once a month. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Dan Krutke. I'm a associate professor of social studies education, former high school teacher, and Glenn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I work as a social studies consultant for an educational service agency called EdTech in Central Kansas. I still consider myself a middle school social studies teacher deep down. That's where I got my start, and that's where that's my love, right? U.S. history. How cool is that? That's always, that's my favorite. So I'm glad to be back, and I missed you over the summer.
Yeah, I know, me too. And yeah, I feel the same as you. I always think like I always tell my teacher candidates I work with, and what a special place to be able to get a classroom and for people to come and join you, and you get to like make these big decisions over what the next hour looks like every day for them, right? And it's an opportunity, I feel like. So today we're going to talk about a specific topic, and I want to start by thinking a little bit about elementary social studies. Of course, this is a area that often, if you're in social studies, knows it's on the back burner. Glenn, like, what are you? What's the state of social studies in Kansas at the elementary level? And then, but like, what are you hearing that's positive too?
Well, I think you're right, and we all know that the amount of time that is spent teaching specifically social studies is dismal. I mean, I talked to elementary principal the other day. We agreed that if they could get like 30 minutes a day, that's awesome. I mean, that's like unheard of, by the way. And he thinks he can figure that out. So the good news, start with the bad news. Not a lot of elementary teachers specifically spend time teaching social studies. It could be 20 or 30 minutes a week. The good news is people are starting to realize how important social studies is, and they're trying to figure out ways to embed that in ELA, in science, as a separate, standalone social studies kind of thing. But the good news, Dan, I think, is people are starting to go, wait a second, this is important. It's foundational. And if we don't do it, K5, K6, kids in middle school and high school are just starting from scratch, and that's wrong. So the bad news, it's still bad. We're not teaching it enough. The good news is people are going, oh, this is bad. We need to do a better job of it. So that's the good news. That's what I'm seeing. There's a trend.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, social studies should be part of anything, any subject, because it's understanding. It's context. It's context for our world, from the past to the future to the present, right, to distance and all these things. It's right about giving things context. I always say everything has a social studies, right? Everything we study. And I'll tell you, I've been very lucky because I was a secondary social studies teacher, but I've been working with elementary social studies classes and teacher candidates, and I've been fortunate to learn from so many elementary social studies teachers and scholars that are doing great work. And the picture books that are out there, it's like secondary people need to learn, because what it is storytelling, right? You're getting this great storytelling in like a small space where you can investigate like big issues. And I'll say this, what elementary does better than secondary is they sometimes ask the biggest questions. And sometimes in secondary, we get so specialized, we focus so in on the details of like what caused the Civil War. We forget to ask about like the root things that are still so important, right? Issues of whether it's racism or oppression or conflict. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because seriously, you're saying this, and I'm flashing back. I sat in on one of your sessions at NCSS. I don't even know. It was in the before times. I don't know how many years ago, but you worked with somebody else. There was a book that we walked through about civil rights, racism, and integration of schools, and Latinx and Hispanic kids and families trying to figure out, how they can get. And what a great book. I still use it. It's back here, actually, somewhere. If I dig through it, it's right there. So, yes.
I could tell you, the book is Separate is Never Equal is the book. It's about the Mendez versus Westminster case. And it tells a tremendous story that's really important to understand how school segregation affected, right, Latino, Latinx students, right?
Yeah.
So when we think about elementary ed tech, though, in social studies, I think we've got to bring in somebody who's out there doing the work, playing with stuff, figuring it out, because that's a way to really, ed tech can be used really positively when it's done thoughtfully. So what do you think, Glenn? Is this a good time we bring in somebody a little bit more knowledgeable than us to teach us some stuff?
Absolutely. And quick introduction. She can share as much as she wants, and so can you. But Lori Rice, as she comes in, Lori Rice, I got to know a couple years ago. She, by the way, is the Kansas Council for the Social Studies Elementary Teacher of the Year. I don't remember when it was. Again, in the before times. She's been doing online instruction for a long time. She's an amazing elementary teacher and an amazing user of tech. She is now at Manhattan School District in Kansas. Doing K2. Lori, is that right? Because that's like, holy crap, K2 and EdTech. So yes, Lori is the guru of elementary social studies EdTech integration in Kansas. So I'm super pumped that you're able to join us, Lori. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. As Glenn said, my name is Lori Rice. I teach K2 elementary virtual for Manhattan Virtual Academy, and I also teach K-12 gifted. So I am online all day, every day, working with kiddos in the EdTech world, and they're doing fantastic things. And it's an exciting time to be in education. Interesting little fun fact, I think, Glenn, thank you. I was Kansas Social Studies Teacher of the Year. That was such an honor before the period back in the day. And the funniest thing about that, I think, is that I hated social studies. When I was growing up, I hated social studies until I finally had a teacher that helped me realize social studies is about stories. And that's what pulled me in, is that social studies is just stories. And that's the piece that I love as an elementary educator, is that I can use that in my classroom no matter what I'm teaching. So I can pull those stories and I can pull that culture and I can use that as a backdoor into social studies in my classroom.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I love that. I agree. And I think sometimes in secondary, we can learn from that again. We miss the stories, like the stories that are really interesting. So Lori, what you're doing today is going to help us talk about some of the things that you're interested in elementary social studies ed tech. So let's jump into it. So what are some tools, some sites, some things that you find interesting, and help tell us why you find those interesting and what other teachers might do with them?
There's lots of things out there for elementary kiddos. My background is I had been teaching fourth grade up until this year. And then I went remote last year and went to virtual this current school year. So I've done this in the classroom, outside of the classroom, both. One of my favorite things to do is green screen with kids. And Do Ink is by far the best I found. It does cost, but you can, give a shout out to your tech people and get them looped into why you're doing this and how important it is and how it can touch everything that you're doing. And it's going to provide a green screen for your kiddos. So you really want to think about starting that out with some simple things like put in some backgrounds and talk about different holidays, show different cultures. But then you can move that up into students giving presentations or newscasts about regions or things from a different point of view. Start playing with the camera angles. So if you're, talking about things from a mountain, let's look down and change that camera angle. And let's give some fun to what the students are doing and presenting. And again, it's not as much about the content as it is about the experience and how they get there and what they learn on the journey. And then it just lets them present what they know. So Do Ink is a really fun app that you can use in the classroom with K through 12 kids.
So Do Ink, is that like an app on a phone, a mobile device? Is it a website? How do teachers go about getting it?
That's going to be an app on, I know they have an iOS. I believe they also have an Android version. And so what it does is it allows you to take video and overlay that and then change a background. So you can put up maps, you can put, cultural places from around the world. You could give a report from a location if you've got a historical novel that you've read or a picture book you've read. You can go down to the pond and talk about make way for ducklings. So what it does is it allows for that video that the students can take to be overlaid with the pictures you want to change behind it. Or another fun thing to do is to actually take photographs of their work. So if they've created a poster, or my favorite is to create a diorama, but very old school back in the day, grab out those shoe boxes and build those environments. You can take a picture of your diorama and use that as your backdrop. So the students are then actually standing in their diorama talking about what they created.
Nice.
I recently saw a teacher do a presentation where they they used green screens and they had famous works of art, and they actually had the students like wander in the face of the works of art and tell stories, which was really cool. But it's also a great, I'm thinking two things, and I'm curious what you think about this. One is I think as you kind of mentioned, it's a great way to have students start thinking about how media is produced, right? As they make decisions about camera angles, about where they want to be, how they want to tell the story, hopefully they'll start being more cognizant about the way that movies, that news, that other people make those decisions on the other end of the camera, because I think that's really important about developing their media education. But then also, I guess I'll let you respond to that. Is there anything, have you seen teachers kind of try to like have those active conversations?
I agree. And anything we do with students, again, you want to have the conversation. This really isn't about the flash and the ed. It's about the conversations that are happening after and before. So you want to have those conversations, not only with how things are perceived and viewed from the media side, but also from perspective, because as we look through history and as we look at social studies topics, there's perspectives to all of that. And so with a green screen app and a camera, it would be very simple to start showing very young children that you can have a different story from the same perspective.
I have a question, Dan.
Glenn?
Okay, thank you for elementary teacher. I don't know what
No, we just shout out and talk.
Okay, so here's my question.
Glenn, they talk all the time.
Okay, so I have a question. We're talking about the littles. They're not going to have a camera. They're not going to have a phone. So is there like what's the solution for like, okay, we got a 25, second graders or third graders or whatever. Maybe they have phones, but most of them won't. What's the solution? iPads or iPods?
Well, yeah. First of all, you'd be surprised. Some of them have phones, which that's a different conversation. Yeah. But iPads work. Okay. Another thing you can do is contact your families. And sometimes families will donate old phones that aren't being used anymore. They don't have to have a service. They just need the camera app. And so I've seen PTOs collect old phones and have those as kind of a, you don't need 25 in the classroom. If you've got 3 of them, you can get what you need. So thinking outside of the box and pulling that resource in.
I love that idea. Absolutely.
I bought a resource that I actually saw a teacher recommend that I just use in my own house, which is just basically it's a mount for my iPhone that's actually got a bendy, flexible, kind of thing. And so you can latch it on any table or any place, and then so wherever you want to record, right, it makes it easy to kind of set it up. The other question I was going to say is, I think this is probably a great tool for formative and summative assessments, right? Like the end of your project when you want to convey all that you've learned on a unit or a topic, this could be great. But it also, sometimes I think we think of it as always having to be like a longer video. I could see like little short videos where students even like all come on a green screen and share what they learned about a topic as a formative assessment too. I don't know. Have you seen people use these as like kind of end projects or projects mid?
Yes, I've used them for the end of our regions projects. And so students talk about the things they've learned about the regions, whether that be climate, landform, natural resources, culture. And so you can use it kind of as a cumulative project for regions. I have also pieced together. So each student does a 30-second, and you can piece those together and make that as long or as short as you want it to be. But you can bring in that collaborative work that way as well.
Well, I love that doing as a great resource. I'm kind of imagining right now, even students like standing over the physical geography map and like kind of being like a meteorologist telling you about the different features, right? And then they could watch some meteorologists to practice like and learn how they do that, which would be kind of a fun thing to do. Well, what are some other, go ahead.
Honestly, the thing my students like best is when they can use their pieces in it. So if they've created something, if they've, used Play-Doh or done some STEM project, and then they can use that in there and be actually inside of it, because they can shrink themselves down so that their STEM project looks huge and they can talk about it. That's really fun. But there are lots of other good things out there as well. Jamboard, Google Jamboard is a fun one to use. Again, that's really about getting kids interactive. So with the sticky notes, you can ask questions, you can have them work together. It's a great way in our current situation of trying to still social distance and be respectful of all the different emotions people feel with COVID, to get kids interactive. So that if you're doing some Kagan strategies where you want to share thoughts and do a jot thought, those of you with Kagan would know that, where you just, every kid jots down the ideas they have, you can throw those on stickies into a Google Jamboard that's shared. And so they can have that. Also helps if you do have a situation where you don't have students all in the same same physical classroom together. So it works really well virtually. You can do that on Zoom, where you're throwing thoughts down on a sticky note. If you want to do a little setup beforehand, you can actually take and make like scratch offs. So I did this with my kinders the other day, and they got to erase and scratch off and reveal what was underneath. And then you have a conversation about whether it's a question or a prompt. Could do the same thing with a photograph and put a photograph under there and slowly reveal, and then, you know, do the scratch off and, hey, where do you think this happened? When do you think this happened? What was the important thing? Because we talk about all the time, you know, where things happen and when things were happening really gives you context for what might be going on. So Google Jamboard's a fun one to work together.
Tell me about the scratch off. Is that a feature that already exists in Google Jamboard that you put the image in and then it puts something over that the students do that, or does the teacher have to do something?
You're gonna have to build that in the reverse. So if you put your sticky notes down and type on them what you want, and then you're gonna cover them up, and what you actually do is use the eraser to scratch off or erase what you covered the sticky note with, and then you'll reveal the sticky note.
Oh, that's creative. I like that. That makes a lot of sense. So I like when people just, you know, it's not like a feature they came up with, but teachers kind of figured that out as a way to use it, huh?
We go, how can we capture someone's attention for longer than 5 seconds?
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
Seriously. No, here's the thing. It takes a long time to use the little pin to cover up this whole thing. So do a Google search and find somebody else's Jamboard and steal theirs, so that you don't have to like, seriously, it's 30 minutes trying to cover this whole deal. Maybe I'm not very good at it, Lori, but
yeah, no, that's what I did. I found a template someone else had already set up, and I changed the sticky notes to be what I needed them to be for kinders. So
very nice. I've seen some really cool activities with photos where you choose a part of the photo you want to start with, right? Yes. And so you show them a part of the photo and then you reveal more of the photo, but you ask them questions as you go along. What do you notice? And it really helps them, which, by the way, kids are really good at detail, right? They often notice things about pictures that adults don't notice, that they miss kind of over. So they're good at it anyway, but like that can allow you to slowly uncover an important photograph that helps teach about some topic, which I love using photographs with younger students because there's just a lot to learn looking at a historical photo.
Yes, definitely.
Lori.
Okay, what else?
Well, real quick, sorry, Dan. I love Jamboard. So I know we got not very much time, but have you done like interactive drag and drop sticky notes? I mean, or even drag and drop images? Because I didn't see, someone talked about it and I saw it in my head, a map, and then kids could drag and drop little images like here's where the Mississippi River is, or here's where the mountains are. Have you tried stuff like that, or does that work?
I haven't done that with an image, but I've done it with sticky notes, so they could organize them in order. So do chronological, because you can move those around so easily. So it would work very simply if you had an image behind and wanted them to identify different things. Kids love arrows. Yeah. Arrows would be great. And then that drag it on there. And
so lots of drag and drop options with Google Jamboard.
Yes. Absolutely. And I always make a copy just in case somewhere along the line. You can usually reverse that back, but I always make a copy as a backup so you don't have that teacher moment of, oh, great, what are we doing now that Johnny messed it up?
Dang it, Johnny.
Always Johnny. I know, Johnny always gets the bad end of it.
Always Johnny.
So what else do you have in your elementary social studies EdTech knapsack? What other tools are you using?
One of the sites that I really enjoy is the Kansas Historical Museum. They really were amazing during COVID. And I loved watching how businesses and organizations reacted to COVID. I think it showed a lot about what their philosophies were. So they did some phenomenal things with moving to a virtual world as a museum. They were not really prepared for that at all, but they have now added to the resources. So if you've ever used Kansas Historical Museum, you can get trunks. They've got lesson plans. They've got the Read Kansas cards. And again, this is K through 12. This isn't just for itty bitties. They've got tons of great information. I always look beyond my grade level. So if I'm teaching a kindergarten lesson, I do always go up and hunt around at some of the first, second, third grade stuff, because as standards have shifted, they have not continued to stay up with that. They've kind of let everything home where it started. But one thing they did was they put in audio recordings. So those Read Kansas cards, which I think are huge and valuable, you can print them. You've got the digital format right there in PDF now for kids to use for research. All of them, K through 12, now have an audio recording to go with them.
Seriously?
So
awesome. Wow.
Awesome. So if you have students that are at a second grade level and you go, you know what, they've got this really good information at 5th grade, you can still use it because the kids can listen to it now. Or if you've got a reader that needs support, they've got that audio support on there. So that's really cool. They've also got some virtual tours and a lot of fun things they're doing. They usually have stuff around Kansas Day. So Kansas Historical Museum is a really fantastic go-to site for Kansas teachers.
And if you're not in Kansas, I highly recommend, looking at some of those museums, whether it's ones local to your community, you know, like a state museum or a city museum, or those national Smithsonian museums. I was just in my last class with some of my students. We were looking at the National Museum of the American Indian, which I was lucky to just have visited recently. And we were able to find a tremendous amount. I just let them go on the site and I was like, find something you can use in your future classrooms, right? And they found all kinds of stuff. I think the thing we ended up liking the best was it ended up finding a link to a really good historical map site that shows the historical homelands of indigenous nations, which, you know, as a map, it like gives you a very different perspective than the political map with state borders that you typically get, which kind of makes colonization in our minds a very settled thing that we don't have to think about. But this map shows you the homelands, and so it makes you really have to think from an indigenous perspective about those. And so that was really cool. And we found other good lessons. We found some good interactive arts lessons. And so it was tremendous. So, you know, if you've got a lesson coming up on indigenous people or on a state history or whatever it is, find those really good museums and tap it and see what your students can do. There's great stuff to be tapped. So I love that you brought up the
absolutely.
Kansas
And it's so
Historical
fun.
Museum.
It's so fun to look at the museums, as you said, the Smithsonian, the Metropolitan. Some of those museums, again, have really taken off and provided these virtual experiences. And one thing I love is being able to find those pieces, even for elementary kids, that, you know, give them that spark to start the conversation, and then get them hooked. If you go on YouTube, there's how to draw. So we've been looking at some Picasso stuff. You can go on and find, you know, here's some simple how to paint like Picasso. And so then you've sparked it. And that's what education is all about, is just getting that spark for kids and letting them then explore further. So some of the museums are fantastic. Library of Congress is also a fantastic site. My kindergarten, first, second graders and I are currently reading the Wizard of Oz book, and it's available at Library of Congress. We went to a field trip on Friday and they had a copy of the book, and they were just, that's what we're reading. Like, we see that on our computer screen every day, and there they have it as an actual book. So, you know, tons and tons of resources at Library of Congress. And again, you think, oh gosh, that's like middle school, high school stuff. Just start conversations. Just tell the stories with your kids. That's what they want.
And one of the things that you kind of just slid right over when you were talking about the Kansas State Historical Society, the traveling trunks are super amazing. And here's the thing. If you do it, like, again, Dan said, well, okay, maybe you're not from Kansas, but just do a Google search, traveling trunks, American Revolution, traveling trunks, Native Americans, whatever your topic is, whatever the keyword is. And you will find, I am not kidding, you will find museums all over, both in your area and around the country, that will send you traveling trunks, many of them for free, because they want their stuff out there no matter where you are. And again, like you said, with the COVID stuff, museums changed how they interact with teachers. And that's one way that they've started to connect, is to make more traveling trunks, to make them more easily available. So traveling trunks, if you're not familiar, inside real and realistic artifacts and primary source documents and the book that you guys are reading. So definitely take advantage of that. Do a search, traveling trunks, whatever you're looking for. And you're going to find museums around the country.
Just start looking at museums. I was so excited. I got an email the other day. The Eisenhower Education Center is doing read alouds for kinders. I would have never looked onto the Eisenhower Education Center to really do much for kindergarten students, but we're going to have someone read to us from the Eisenhower Museum. And again, it's just about sparking that curiosity and having kids start asking questions and, oh, okay, you know, well, where is that? And what is going on? And who was that? So beginning those stories for kids is so important. And as you said, museums have really taken off with that.
So we only have probably about 3 to 4 minutes before we do our outros and tell people where to find us. Do you want to run through some of the other ones, even if you can't go into as much detail, and just tell us some of your other favorite EdTech tools and sites and apps that you use in elementary social studies?
Yep. I'd kind of like to just also say that it's not about taking the time. You're not forcing this content in. You are looking at this from a lens of, what am I providing for my students to see? How am I showing them different cultures? How am I showing them different regions? How am I showing them locations, and having conversations or providing the space for conversations about these stories? So as we started to talk about in the beginning, books is a way into the elementary classroom. And there are some fantastic resources for teachers to get quality books in the classroom, because I know funding is not at a high right now, but Storyline Online is sponsored by the Screen Actors Guild. And so actors and actresses are reading the book. So of course their voices are fantastic. There's a story about geography. There's stories about different time periods. There's one, As Fast as Words Can Fly, that talks about a boy who enters a typing contest. Fantastic books. And you can use those as fillers for, hey, we're doing milk break right now, so I'm going to put this on, but I'm going to get some quality story in front of you that maybe opens your view to something different you haven't experienced before, whether that be culturally or regionally. Epic is another one. You go to getepic.com and it is free for schools. And they add books every single year. I am amazed at the types of books they have. And again, we're talking quality picture books for children. We're talking chapter books for children. We're not talking a boxed program that somebody's created. They're actually using, I think Brown Bear's on there. It's got quality literature for kids to be looking at, reading at, and discussing. And then if you can't get something through your own library, Sunflower Reading is a great thing to do. You just use your local library card and get it on whatever device you read, whether that be your Kindle, your phone, your iPad. So that can open up what's available for your students. Because again, you really want to think about looking at what's on your bookshelf and giving it a twist so that they're hearing something from that different perspective that we talked about with Do Inc. You want them to be thinking about things from somebody else's point of view because they already know theirs.
Yeah. Very cool.
Absolutely. And libraries, every once in a while to remind people how great libraries are, right? You can get so many great picture books. One thing you mentioned to us when we were prepping this is you said something you just started to play with is wordwall.net. Do you want to just mention kind of some ideas you have about how that could possibly be used?
Yeah, wordwall.net. That is my brand new. I found it less than 24 hours ago, shared it with my working colleague already, and am super excited. Honestly, I was looking for a spinner. Kindergartners, we're working on some numbers and we're adding. I was looking for a spinner, but it also has, you can make matching games, you can make quizzes. And so those things are out there, but Wordwall looked like it had a lot of capability. It has a free version that looked like it had enough stuff to definitely get started. And really anything we can gamify in the classroom is going to grab their attention, get them engaged, get them playing, and get them talking. And this looked like a fun way to do that, especially thinking through using some vocabulary that you want to incorporate through, especially through social studies, but through anything you're doing. So yeah, I haven't explored it, but it looked like it had some fun things, and I would recommend you add that to your things to do list.
Great. And then I know a lot of your resources are available online. Do you all want to tell us about that being available on the ESDAC website?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to be part of a grant program with Glenn last year, and we ran some trainings for teachers virtually, did lots of conversation about going beyond in social studies and just telling stories, looking at stories through different lenses. And so Glenn was fantastic and built this resource that's there on the esdac.me/geogrant. You're going to find some of the things we've talked about that give you even more resources and more links. It was through National Geographic, so we used a lot of things that they have available, and they've got stuff online as well for teachers. They've got lesson plans. One of my favorites is 50 States and 50 Birds. They do a video, little singing cartoon bird video for the 50 states that talk about the different features of the states. The kids love that. They have a YouTube channel that has lots of things on it. So that is a great way to get some culture into your classroom as well.
All right. So as we wrap up here, Lori, where can everybody find you online, and if they want to connect or ask you any other questions?
I am at Miss L Rice on Twitter, Lori Rice. Apparently, there's another Mrs. L Rice. I'm sure she's lovely and delightful. She teaches kindergarten as well, so I know she's awesome.
Yeah.
But you can connect with me on Twitter, send me a message. If you want to email me, my email is loriR@usd383.org. And I am more than happy to share ideas or chat. I love talking this kind of stuff, and I love helping teachers plan.
Well, thanks. And I am Dan Tretka. You can find me online. And then, of course, we gotta always give pub to glennwiebe.org, which takes you to his HistoryTech blog. Glenn, do you want to tell us where to find you?
Right there, glennwiebe.org. At GlennW98 is my Twitter handle. So, yep, absolutely. Same with Lori. Let me know how I can help.
And it is 6 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock Eastern. And so we are going to turn it over to SS Chat because we're trying to be the pregame for SS Chat on the first Monday of each month. Tonight's SS Chat is on station rotations in social studies classrooms. So make sure to join them. Thank you for listening to this. And thank you to Lori in particular for sharing all your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Lori. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dan. See you guys.